welcome to the Electric Spirit Podcast. I'm your host, Psychic Medium Jamie Lynn. Today, our episode is about transforming depression through acupuncture. And our guest today is Dr. Alex Joannou. And Dr. Alex is the founder of Transformational Acupuncture International, and he's a leading global expert on depression and acupuncture. He's an award-winning speaker, two-time #1 best-selling author, and highly accredited general practitioner doctor. His 40-year medical career spans 300,000 patient consultations and over 35,000 acupuncture treatments. Dr. Alex has been training medical students, international medical graduates, and general practice registrars for over 20 years to help people achieve that true feeling of peace that comes with healing. Dr. Alex spent much of his medical career as the practice principal of Northside Health, a 12-doctor medical center, and his practice led him to additional training in nutritional and environmental medicine, counseling, and cognitive behavioral therapy, where he has witnessed firsthand the complex interrelationship between the mind, body, and spirit. Hi, Dr. Alex.
Okay.
Welcome to the Electric Spirit Podcast.
Oh, thanks, Jamie.
Yeah. Could you please tell the audience about yourself?
Yeah. I've been a GP, a general practitioner of medicine for the last 40 odd years. And for the last 25 years, I've been doing acupuncture as well. And then about 10 years ago, I came across a form of acupuncture, which I realized helped depression. And it was quite a journey to get there, but it was just, I guess the first patient I had where I really recognized what was going on was a patient I was treating for osteoarthritis. She had it quite widespread and was at the point of she had started taking opioid drugs. And after I started treating her, within about 2 or 3 weeks, she had stopped the painkillers because she didn't need them anymore. But then I kept going with the treatment, and after a couple of months, she asked if she could stop her antidepressants. And she had been on them for 16 years. And I'm thinking, oh, perhaps she didn't really need to be on antidepressants. But the year before, another doctor in our practice had tried to get her off antidepressants, and her depression came back. So I was quite cautious, but gradually weaned her off it. And yeah, she's not only the depression's gone, but off the medication, she actually started feeling happy. It was around Christmas time when it happened, and she heard some Christmas carolers outside her house, and it just she burst into tears with happiness and joy in her heart at hearing the Christmas carols. And she said she hadn't felt anything like that for years.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, so my wife is a doctor as well, and she said, you've got to document this. You got to figure out what's going on. So that's when I started to really research it.
Oh, that's wonderful. And what is transformational acupuncture, like you're speaking about, and how does it assist with depression?
Yeah. Well, it's different from traditional Chinese medicine. It has blends of that, but what you're doing is using acupuncture to affect the chakras, because each chakra, which is based on the Hindu system of viewing the body, is actually acupuncture points. So therefore, you can use acupuncture needles to affect those chakras, and that has levels of effect at the level of body, mind, and spirit. Because it has an impact on how you're feeling physically, and also a releasing of emotions, because in depression people build up emotional baggage, and so they can't feel the range of emotions normally. And then it works on the spiritual aspects as well. People feel connected better on the treatments. It's so it's something that thrills me, because I feel like I'm actually helping people And I don't know, I'm a doctor, but I've always had this inner need to get people off medication
Oh
rather than
yeah.
put
Well,
them
that's
on
great.
medication. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I get a thrill every time I stop somebody's medications.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's
Yeah.
great. Yeah. I just was curious, if someone
Mm.
sought out your service, do you just do this in person, or do you have people
Well,
that
yeah. Well,
learn
I
this
do.
under
I
you?
have.
Yeah.
Yeah, both. I mean, I
Okay.
have as a GP, I've sort of really focused on acupuncture for the last 10 years,
Yeah.
and but I've winding back my practice now, so that I've actually started training other acupuncturists in this method.
I
So
see.
for the last couple of years, I've been doing it live in workshops around Sydney and Melbourne and Brisbane because that's where I am in
Uh,
Australia.
okay.
But just in the last couple of months, I've started doing it online, and I've got my first successful cohort that
Oh,
from Australia, but also even from Canada now. So I'm hoping to expand that worldwide.
oh,
And
wonderful.
yeah, I mean, depression is such a pervasive thing, especially
Yeah.
since the COVID situation. There's an estimated 280 million people around the world with depression. And of course, it not only affects them, but it affects their families and colleagues
Mhm.
at work and so on. It has a
Yes, of
massive
course.
impact.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
And how does Western medicine view depression?
Yeah. Well, the problem is we've come up with a category system that's the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual,
Yeah.
which classifies all mental disorder. But the fact that they use the word disorder is because it's just a classification system. Something is out of order by definition, and it's not a disease. And too often, even though people will give lip service to saying it's not a disease, even amongst doctors, we treat it like it's a disease. And the difference is that doctors are taught to look for disease. So if you come along and you say you're feeling depressed, the doctor will examine you mostly through questioning because there's no specific abnormality in the body. You can do blood tests and there's nothing that says you're depressed, or there's no MRI scans that's going to say you're depressed. So the doctor's relying on what the patient's telling them, and from that they make a diagnosis of depression. But the problem is the longer you're around as a person with mental illness, the more diagnoses you collect over the years, because there's diseases come in fads and waves, and the latest fad seems to be complex PTSD, and there's other ADHD and all of these sort of things, which it's a classification. It's not an actual disease. And when you go to the doctor, if he gives you a medication and you feel less depressed, well, the doctor sits back and thinks, well, this has worked. The person's less depressed, and they're almost functioning normally. But you can, just because you haven't got depression doesn't mean you're happy. You know, it's not the same thing.
Right.
Being happy involves a whole lot more in terms of expressing positive emotions and having hope and
Yeah.
outlook on life and so on, and a sense of gratitude. All that's involved in happiness, and that's not measured by doctors. It's not looked for. So, and there's no drug that's going to make you happy. You know what I mean?
Exactly. It sounds
Yeah.
like with the girl or the lady that listened to the Christmas carolers,
Mm.
that maybe for all those years, the medication wasn't letting her really feel. It sounds like it
Yeah.
numbs people.
I think that's true. I mean, a lot
Hmm.
of patients, when you talk to them, they do describe that feeling of feeling numb or
Hmm.
zonked. And yeah, it's not a good state to be in. And
No.
often early in the treatments, when I do the acupuncture, is patients get an emotional release, which can come in the form of suddenly bursting into tears when I needle a particular point because it's releasing an emotion, or it can happen a day or two later. They might be say at home with a spouse, and then suddenly the spouse says something which annoys them, but then it's suddenly blown out of proportion, and they let it rip, and really have a go at them.
Wow.
And then they feel all embarrassed afterwards, but it's because of all these years of pent up emotion that's been
Wow.
stuck in the body.
That's amazing. Wow.
Yeah,
And
thanks.
and how is depression diagnosed and measured? I know you kind of talked about it that it can't be, but I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah, because the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical
mhm,
Manual, gives the official diagnosis, but there's nothing permanent about it, because every few years they come out with a new edition of the manual, and the manual's grown from a book that was about 100 odd pages to now
mhm,
it's over 1,000 pages. So they pathologize things more and more. So more and more things, even like being focused on the internet, can become an addiction.
yeah,
You can create these definitions, and then of course a drug company will try a drug, and if the antidepressant decreases that behavior somewhat, well, then that's considered to be a treatment for that condition. So we're pathologizing things. And even bereavement, which if someone loses a partner, I mean, it's basically one of the worst things that can happen in your life in terms of
yeah.
emotional situation. And when I was going through medical school 40 years ago, uh, you couldn't, you weren't allowed to diagnose someone as depressed if their partner had died, because they were in a state of bereavement. And that period of time was listed as 2 years. But after I graduated, the next edition, they reduced that period of time of bereavement to 2 months. So if you still felt depressed and sad about losing your partner after 2 months, there's something wrong with you. And believe it or not, the latest, the DSM-5, the latest edition, they've reduced that period to 2 weeks. So you
Wow.
could, which seems insane. I mean, we live in a nanosecond world, but you're supposed to get over it or something and
Hmm.
move on. But,
Wow.
so you can change the definitions how you like, and then you can suddenly create a whole bunch of people that need drugs.
Hmm. Wow.
And you can
Interesting.
measure this thing with what's called the DAS score, Depression, Anxiety, Stress Scale. And that measures, out of 21, there's 7 questions on depression, anxiety, and stress. And that gives you a sign of how people are progressing. But, I've seen people, well, recently I went to Canada, and I thought there was a friend of a friend who was depressed, and he had been depressed for 18 years and was on medications for it. They tried all sorts of medications and nothing felt very satisfactory, but it was better than nothing. But when I measured his on the scale, he measured as being moderately depressed and severely anxious and moderately stressed, even though he'd been on drugs for 18 years. So I had the opportunity of seeing him daily for a week, giving him this treatment. And at the end of the week, he rated as being not depressed, not anxious, or not stressed anymore. So that
Wow.
was in 7 days so people think, oh, well, acupuncture, it costs a bit to go along for a treatment, but, would you rather take a drug for 18 years or have a week's worth of intensive treatment, sort of thing?
Sure. Definitely. Yeah. And
Mm.
what role does medication play in the treatment of depression? I know you kind of talked about that, but
Yeah, yeah. Well, it really, I think I mean, it's the first thing doctors turn to,
mm,
that and psychotherapy. But psychotherapy or counseling involves sitting down with someone, which is labor intensive, and it can be, it's very challenging to go through the whole process. So a lot of people will say, well, I don't want to do counseling, thanks very much. I want a quick fix. And so it's natural for doctors to turn to drugs, and it will make you feel less depressed most of the time, but it's not actually making you feel happy, and it's not actually empowering you to work through the issues and give you the mental skills and tools to improve your life.
Right. I
So
agree.
yeah, so that's I mean, certainly people there's people that need medications at times, and not saying throw them away. And even when I
Yeah.
treat people, I don't immediately, like this person I treated recently. It's not like I say, okay, stop the drugs, you're cured now, because obviously it's a process over time, and you need
Yeah.
to wean off these things gently. So I wouldn't encourage anybody to just suddenly stop it, throw them away. But yeah, with time and with the process of acupuncture, it can really make a massive difference.
Right. And if someone goes off their medication and you're treating them
Mm.
for depression, how long would you recommend they go to you for your acupuncture?
Yeah, well, usually what I do is weekly for 8 weeks, and in that
Oh,
time, it's like not a long period of time. 8 weeks.
yeah.
Most people feel better, and some people feel massively better.
Hmm.
And the thing is, at first, when you first treat people, they feel good for like a couple of days, and then they go back to feeling the way they were. But with repeated treatments, that effect lasts longer. So usually after 8 weeks, I say, well, let's, assuming they've improved, let's do it fortnightly now. And as soon as they feel as good in the second week as they did in the first week, then I'll say, well, let's go to every 3 weeks and so on. And literally, I
Okay.
get some people who only need to come in, every 3 months for a treatment, just to keep them topped up,
Sure.
so to speak.
Right. Exactly. Wow, that's
Yeah.
great. And how does the effect of your acupuncture different from medication in the treatment of depression?
Yeah, well, I think because medication's just trying to
Mm.
dull the emotional response, so people feel less depressed. But whereas with acupuncture, what I'm trying to do is release and shift people through the emotions. And once that happens, they talk about energy getting stuck in the body, and when you release that, things can move, and that's why like that patient I mentioned before could spontaneously laugh and feel happy and cry all at the same time, which she couldn't do that while she was on the drug therapy, because
Right.
it's holding a pattern sort of thing.
Oh, I
So
see.
if you know what I
Interesting.
mean. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I've heard
so this
that.
is helping people, I think, go to the next level mentally, higher, spiritually, whichever way you want to look at that, to to start making changes to their life. A few years ago, when I got onto this, I followed 6 people over a period of a year to see how they progressed with the treatment. And they didn't actually have treatment for the year, but I followed them for a year. And one particular woman was quite depressed, and she had and getting migraines all the time, to the point that she couldn't get out of bed each day. That the only thing she got out of bed for was to take the kids to school and then go home, back to bed, and then get out of bed to pick them up from school, because she was so incapacitated by the migraines and feeling sad. And she didn't really know why until, with the treatments, things started to shift for her. And then she realized, when she was thinking in a certain way, she could feel the triggers of the migraine starting to come on. So she found she was able to stop the migraines by changing her thoughts. And it turned out that she had moved from Sydney to a rural country town, what we call in Australia going for a tree change. So you change your scenery by
Yeah.
moving to the country. And she and her
Uh,
husband thought that that would be a happy life for them. But
mm,
it turned out they were both miserable, but they hadn't talked about it with each other, because they thought they were doing it for the partner's benefit. So
interesting.
so once she started talking with her husband, and in a matter of a few months, they decided to move to Europe, where his family lived. And she was so happy. And the other thing was that she had trained as a lawyer, and yet she had moved to the country and was just doing farm work, and it wasn't satisfying her needs to feel like she was contributing to society in that. But
Yeah.
when she moved, they went to Europe, and I rang her from Australia, and And she was just so happy because she had found work working for a non-profit organization, international non-profit organization, and she was using all her lawyer skills and so on in doing that. And the kids were much happier. And apparently, because the husband and wife were sort of having arguments and feeling sad and depressed and so on, that the kids' grades at school had dropped. But now they were thriving at school, and she was just about to go out that night when I rang her. She was going to out to have dinner and go to the opera with her husband, and it was just just life was completely different from what she had experienced. But she was in this hole, and she couldn't find a way out of it by herself. But the acupuncture did that for her.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, in her case, she had tried antidepressants but didn't like the effects of them. And she was like continually taking painkillers for the migraines. And, within, I think, about 6 weeks, the migraine stopped completely. And she was able to throw away all those medications and start living life again. But, it's hard to see how a pill could do that for someone. But, I'm continually amazed by the effects of the acupuncture and thrilled by it. So it motivates me to try and help as many people as possible. Years ago, I thought, well, I can't treat that many people in the world. So that's when I thought I should train others to do it.
Yeah.
Other acupuncturists.
Definitely. Is that what you're doing? You're training all the other acupuncturists?
Yeah. So I've trained about 30 people so far.
Okay.
And but I started the online course. So I'm trying to take it worldwide, basically, because obviously not limited by time and space now.
And people can just go on your website to find what's going on as far as if it's in their area, right?
Yeah. My website says stickittodepression.com.
Okay, yeah, right.
And all they have to do is click the button, start here, and just they could be on my newsletter list, that sort of thing.
Oh, that's wonderful. And I wanted to talk about the chakras. What role do chakras play in the treatment of depression?
Yeah, well, I think it's sort of foundational in a way, because the chakras, I mean, most medically or Western trained people wouldn't think of the chakras as anything that thinking about when you're doing yoga or something like that. But the thing is, they are, you could conceive of them as energy centers down the spine. But the thing is, you can relate them to different endocrine organs in the body. Like the pineal gland with the crown chakra, for example, and the pituitary gland with the third eye chakra, and so on. And then you can relate them to nerve complexes as well, plexuses. So like the solar plexus chakra relates to the solar plexus of nerves. So you can influence, by influencing the chakras with the acupuncture, then influences the whole endocrine and nervous systems in the body. And not only that, but as you probably would know, with the Ayurvedic stuff with the chakras, is that it relates to spirituality. For example, the root chakra relates to feeling safe and secure, all the way through to the crown chakra at the top of the head, which relates to connection to the divine. And the thing is that this fits in beautifully with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which Maslow, being a Western psychologist, had said basically that, well, the first thing people need to establish is their basic safety and physiological needs, like eating and so forth. And if you're, for example, lacking food or a shelter, that's your prime thing in life, is to get more food. And of course, in a hunter-gatherer lifestyle, that's often the prime focus is getting your next meal. But the thing is, once you've got your meal, and it's pretty certain that it's going to arrive on time, you've got food in the cupboard, then you can think about higher things. So he talked about this hierarchy where people could ascend to the ultimate thing, which is self-transcendence, which is sort of really a connection to the divine. And
Oh,
the thing is, the acupuncture can help people with that, amazingly.
oh, that's amazing.
Yes.
And how is the acupuncture that you teach different from the generally accepted form of
Yeah,
acupuncture?
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, well, that's key because the acupuncture I teach is basically using the points that acupuncturists are familiar with. There's one or two points that are just in a slightly different position from what they normally expect, but generally it uses the same system. But it's the combination of needles. You use the needles in various patterns to create sacred geometric shapes on the body, and getting the person who's having the treatment to visualize the connections is key, and it seems to have a lot more power that way than just needling as acupuncturists normally needle, putting needles in relatively random order. So it's the
yeah.
combinations. So that's why it makes it a system that's easy to teach, and it's
Mhm.
easy for them to actually start treating people. Usually, from the very first workshop, the first evening, they can go away and needle someone
Oh, wow.
confidently,
Okay.
so they can start getting results straight away.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Wonderful. And what outcomes can one expect if they implement your type of acupuncture for the treatment of depression?
Yeah, well, they'll get, well, I've proven it that I've trained other acupuncturists in this, and they can get the same results that I get with my patients.
Right.
So I'm really excited because I hear stories back from the acupuncturists. Just the last training group, acupuncturists from Canada, after the very first night of, 1 hour training, she went the next day and gave the treatment to a 94-year-old patient of hers. And the patient was excited to ring the next day and said, for the first time in 20 years, I'm free of pain this morning, the day after. So literally that quick, people can start getting results. So I find
Oh.
that very exciting.
So if the people listening, let's say they wanted to do acupuncture,
Mhm.
do they need some background to be able to do that, or
Yeah,
can they
yeah. Well,
contact
they
you?
need to be
Mhm.
licensed acupuncturists to
Okay,
learn my method. So
I
I'm not
see.
teaching them how to do acupuncture. It's the particular combinations and methods and techniques of this system,
Yeah.
which, so far, the acupuncturists I've been teaching, I find it easy to pick up.
Oh, I see. Okay. And
Yeah.
if
So,
someone, let's say
mm,
I was a licensed acupuncturist and I wanted to
mm.
learn with you, how long would it take me?
Well, literally, it's eight 1 hour sessions
Oh,
over,
okay.
over 8
Mhm.
weeks.
I see. Okay.
Mm.
Wow, that's great.
So it's
And
quick.
yeah, right, exactly. And so people can just keep looking because people in the States, they could be interested. I know
Mm.
we have people all over the world listening to this podcast, but
Great. Yeah.
people in the United States, if they were looking for what you do, just keep up on your
Yeah. Yeah.
site.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Stick
Well,
to
as I
it,
say, just
depression. Yeah.
stick it to depression.
Or
Yeah.
stick it to depression. Sorry.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
all right. Yeah.
Right. That's
So, well,
wonderful.
it's got the up
Yeah,
on the
yeah,
screen.
stick it to depression. And then are you on social media? Where could people find you there?
Yes. Yeah. I'm on
Mhm.
Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's great.
Yeah.
What about Instagram?
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
You on
I'm on
there?
Instagram
Okay,
as
so it's
well.
just stick it to depression, right? They just
Yeah.
put in
Yeah.
that. Okay, cool. And what are you hoping to do with this? Are you hoping to change the world or I
Oh,
mean, which is
definitely.
great. Yeah, okay. And
Definitely.
I mean that
Um,
out of sincerity, not
yeah.
being
Yeah. Well,
condescending. Right.
I guess,
Yeah.
yeah, from a personal
Hmm.
level, about the time I sort of came across this method, a close friend of the family ended his life,
Oh gosh.
and it was just after really just having an argument with the next door neighbour, literally, and he went away and ended his life, and it was just a shock to his partner, who's a really good friend of mine, and to his
Sorry.
family and friends, and I just thought it was such a waste. And you know. All he
Yeah.
needed was someone to talk to or some other outlet
Oh,
rather
yeah.
than what he did. And
Oh,
yeah,
that's a
and
shame.
so yeah, so that, I guess that spurred me to sort of look for solutions. And
Right.
yeah, at the same time, I came across this, and it
Ah,
wasn't initially being used for depression, but sort of through the patients and my wife's encouragement, I recognized the potential.
wow.
So, and it seems fairly consistent. I mean, nothing's 100%, not even drugs, but
Yeah.
yeah, consistently, most people feel a lot better, and within
Oh,
a 8 weeks. So,
that's amazing.
hmm, it
Wow.
seems too good to be true, but I've witnessed time and again people saying, "Oh, this won't work." I don't believe it, but because you're a doctor, okay, I'll give it a go. And they,
That's good.
and then getting a surprise because they go, "Oh,
Yeah.
wow, I didn't realize it was, this
Right.
amazing."
But especially being a doctor, you probably wouldn't be doing this if you didn't think it worked, you know,
That's
right?
right. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, what
for
would be the
sure.
point, right?
That's exactly right.
Yeah, right. So our tagline for the Electric Spirit podcast is igniting your spirit. How
Yeah.
do you ignite your spirit, Dr. Alex?
Well, yeah, I guess my first experience of having this treatment on myself was such a powerful one, that I'd had. I literally, it was like a psychedelic vision. I was flying. I had 6 foot wings, and I was flying over the countryside, and
Wow.
I saw people down below, and then I recognized amongst those people there was some people who were close friends who had hurt me and wounded me severely, through marital difficulties. And I don't want to need to go into the detail, but
Yeah.
the thing was, is when I saw them, I realized the realization came to me that their inflicting pain on me was a byproduct of their drama. It wasn't intentional. And as soon as I recognized that, it was like I could literally feel my heart opening up, and a flood of compassion came out for these people. And then I kept flying, and then I saw myself down below there as well. And then I recognized that I was just a weak, fallible human being as well, making mistakes. And, because I'd always been very perfectionistic.
Yeah.
And as soon as I recognized that, again, my heart opened out with a flood of compassion for myself. And that's changed my life since.
No,
Uh, you
that's
know,
amazing.
yeah, because
Yeah.
it's a story that I can tell, but you don't feel the impact until you experience it.
Yeah.
With these friends, as a Christian, I'd always looked at a Bible to help me to understand forgiveness, and how
Yeah.
how do how do you physically, how can you go through the steps of forgiving someone in a sense of feeling complete and whole again. But it
Yeah.
wasn't until I had that treatment that I experienced that, and that really ignited me. And that's I want to share that with
Uh,
as many people as possible, in a sense of them having their own experiences. And
oh.
yeah, so that's what gets me up every day and turns me on.
Oh, that's great. And what advice would you give? Because I have some clients that are afraid of needles. What
Mm.
would you say if they've never had acupuncture and they say, "Oh my gosh, I don't like needles"?
Yeah, yeah.
Would you
It's
say?
it's a totally different experience from like having a needle, like a blood test or something like that.
Right,
It's
or a
it's not
shot.
generally not painful. In fact, the
Okay.
needles have a rounded end, so when you put them in, it pushes nerves and blood vessels to one side or the other rather than cutting, which is what like when you have a blood test that's got a cutting edge on it. So as a result, it's not painful. And you know, I always say to patients when they come in, I say, look, I'll just put one needle in, and you let me know if
Hmm.
that's okay or not. And they always say, oh, is that all? Go
Yeah.
ahead, give me more.
And the needles are really thin, aren't they?
Yeah, super. Yeah,
Different
some
than
of
the.
the thinnest ones are not much thicker than the hair.
Oh,
They're really
interesting.
that fine. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So you really, I don't, I've had it done before. I don't sense you can really feel them
Mm, mm.
much.
That's right.
With my experience.
Yeah.
Um,
And
I
that's the vast majority of people's experience. It's not painful at all.
right, exactly. And
Mm.
I don't know if you want to add anything before we go, or if you want to tell the audience
Oh,
anything
no,
else, or
no, just stay tuned. If you're in an area where there isn't an acupuncturist doing this, well, if you know them, reach out to them and say, hey, go and visit Dr. Alex's website, stickittodepression.com, and sign
okay,
up for this. Because,
yeah,
the more acupuncturists I can train, obviously the greater the spread,
yeah,
because there's definitely a need for it.
definitely.
Yeah, I mean, the level of depression and anxiety has gone through the roof since COVID. Really.
Definitely. Yeah, it's sad.
Mm.
And it's hard too, because some people don't want to talk about it or deal with it, but it's like we all
Yes.
had to the whole world was shut down. That's trauma.
Mm.
I mean, my gosh, it was scary. We didn't know what was going on. So no
That's
matter
right.
which way you slice it, whatever you believe in or your
Mm.
beliefs about it, it was still traumatizing.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. And there's
Yeah.
still people sort of shut down since.
Yeah, exactly.
They've self-imposed,
Mm-hmm.
but
Yeah.
you know,
And people were
but
separated from their loved ones. I didn't mean to
oh yeah,
interrupt.
yeah.
Sorry. That
Yeah,
was
yeah, yeah.
hard,
No, I agree.
you know.
It's tragic on so many
Yeah,
levels.
exactly. It was. So, well, this is great. So, I'll ask you again, just so the audience
Mm.
is clear on it. If people go to your website, Stick It to Depression, you might have a list of practitioners that they could
Yes, yeah.
find,
There's a
right?
page there with
Okay.
certified
Okay.
practitioners,
Yeah.
and they can just email me or contact me through just clicking on the
Okay.
button "Start Here,"
Okay.
and then
Great.
I'll be in contact with them
Yeah. And you said
and
if
put them on my newsletter.
okay. And you said if,
Yeah.
let's say, somebody's going to somebody for acupuncture and their
Mm.
acupuncturist doesn't know about this, they could tell their
Mm.
acupuncturist about you and they could
Absolutely.
look into this.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
That'd be great.
Yes, no
Wow.
worries.
Oh, wow. This is great. And it was so great having you here, Dr. Alex.
Thanks, Jamie.
And you can find Alex on his website, Stick It to Depression. Is it .com?
Yes.
Okay. Very good. And thank you
Yeah.
for being here.
Well, it's my pleasure.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Jamie.
Thanks.